From the floor of the CME Group, this is Danny Riley from MrTopStep.com. You know, the S&P has been a little bit of a twizzle over the last couple of weeks. Out of the last 13 trading days, the S&P has been down 9 for a total of 119 negative handles. It's been pretty much of a washout on the downside. Now, what I want to talk about real quickly is a couple articles that I wrote in the last couple of weeks. On January 22nd, I wrote an article about the S&P. It was called S&P 500, 589 days since the last 10% correction. On January 24th, I wrote a story called the S&P 500, buy puts and put them away. On that day, the S&P closed down 42 handles. It started out literally unchanged. And then on February 3rd, yesterday, I came back with an article I wrote called Memories of the 87 Crash, and the S&P closed down 43.8 handles. It's been a real big washout over here in the S&P. Now on the year, the S&P came in and down 7%, the S&P is down 6%, and the NASDAQ is down 5.5%. Now, most of these losses have all come in the last 2 weeks. Now, what's going on this morning is you had Hang Seng and you had Japan down sharply. Japan was down 4.15%. I think Hang Seng was down 3.89%. Now, what happens here is that the S&P becomes the leading index again, meaning that after these big sharp declines in Asia and the big steep sell-off we've had here in the S&P over the last couple of weeks, the S&P became the leader again this morning. And as it always is, it is the #1 leading index in the world. And when I say that, what I think has happened is yesterday, when the S&P was down 43.8 handles, the reason that Asia was down was because of that loss in the S&P. Now, when Asia sold off sharply and Europe came in lower, everything seemed to firm up. And part of that is that the mutual funds tend to put money to work on the first 3 days of the month. Now, as far as business days are concerned, this is the second day of the month, and it's also one of our favorite days. It's called Turnaround Tuesday. And Turnaround Tuesday has been a big up day for the S&P, and it's known for squeezing out a lot of shorts. Now, the S&P traded up to 1748 and change this morning and has pulled back. But what we're looking here for today is to figure out whether today is an up day, an uptrend day. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at every half hour to see if they're doing buy programs. And if they're doing buy programs on the half hour, that means that they may have some type of agenda left on the upside. Now, as far as the rest of the week is concerned, we think that the S&P may back and fill a little bit for a couple days, and then you have that all-important jobs number on Friday. We're going to leave it like that, and we'll see you with another Mr. Top Step update.